Hi, my name is Skylar Anderson, and I'm a principal product designer here at GitHub. And I am a white male. I'm wearing a tan t-shirt and a red sweater. And I'm going to be talking about high impact design, or how you as a designer can create additional impact through storytelling. Now, here at GitHub, I work on the Copilot team. And one of my favorite memes right now, maybe you've seen it on Twitter, is this one where you ask ChatGPT to generate an image, and then you keep asking for more of a particular trait. And so it's funny because eventually it just becomes completely unhinged. But I thought, as I was researching ideas for this talk, maybe I'd try it and see sort of what bias the model has about impact in design. So we start here with this like really nice picture of a designer. And she's got like the wireframes open, and she's using a pen on her keyboard. And it's beautiful. Like all the details are right, except like in typical generative AI fashion, the monitor is on backwards for some bizarre reason. But as we start to ask for more impact, you can start to see how the model changes what it thinks impact means for a designer. You just keep asking for more impact, and more impact. And like you see the audience changing. Eventually it gets to like the international, I don't know, like policy level. And then we get into space, and like different planets show up with their ships. And like she grew 4 feet tall. And now like galaxies and celestial beings are showing up to listen to this talk, and achieving sort of maximum impact at the end. We just transcend, physical reality and become this like godlike entity. And so it has to, it made me think like if you're a product designer and your looms don't look like this with like 4 trillion views and Zorg from the Fifth Element showing up to see your talks, like, are you even trying right now? Which is kind of silly. Like when you take it to that extreme, that's the whole point of the meme. But if you look at the first 4 images before it became like completely unhinged, there are some things that I don't know you might agree with. So the obvious one that I mentioned is the audience size changes. Starting first with the first image, she's alone, sort of creating the artifact. And then in the next image, she's presenting it to a small group of her peers. And then next up is like kind of the executive level. They're even on the top floor of a, high rise. And then ending with this like Steve Jobs style presentation in front of a packed auditorium. The other thing that changes that I think is kind of interesting, is a little more subtle, is that in the first image, she's very much focused on the creation of the artifact. You can see like the rectangles moving around in Figma there. But very quickly, the level of abstraction changes a little bit, and you don't even see rectangles anymore, really. You see sort of, these abstract concepts of charts moving. And I think what that means to me is maybe observable changes to the business in some way, and that they're focused on those changes and maybe less about the artifact. And then ultimately it's this big product launch, and they're focused very much on the features of the element of the product and how it impacts customers in this packed audience. And so I don't think that assessment is totally off. And so I looked internally here at the hub and what we say about impact, and I think it's pretty close. It says, this hub article on performance and development says it's not about the activity, it's about the impact of those activities, in particular how your contributions move the team, the product, the customer, or the company forward. And that's further supported by, if you look at the product design levels chart, it has these different colors for different levels. And I blurred it out, there's a bunch of details there, but the general gist of it is, as you move from an L3 to a principal, the main thing that changes across all these skills is actually the sphere of influence, like how many people you need to impact to like succeed in your job. So I think it is kind of true that like, the audience gets bigger, like the expectation for the people's minds you need to change, and the convincing you need to do scales as your career does. I think this also says that the mere existence of an artifact, of a Figma file, is not sufficient impact. That the impact is only found when you're able to use that artifact to make real change for the business in a way that matters. And that change isn't something that can just manifest on its own, that it actually requires a lot of people. And that change is a team sport. And that as you're playing that sport, you can't take for granted that alignment is the default. That's actually not the case. Everybody has different priorities, different thoughts, and that it will take some convincing. And so for the remainder of this talk, I'm going to talk through some things that I've learned in my career. And I wish it was like, I don't know, I wish there was a point I could say that I was really thoughtful and strategic about this in my career, and I planned this all out, or that somebody told me, and it was like a bunch of checklists. And these aren't things that anybody told me, but I started to learn this a few years ago. And actually, I shared this on Slack recently because Dylan said something about me looming, and it was flattering, and I had to share the truth. And the truth is, a long time ago, I was asked to present in front of my entire company at the time, and it was kind of on a whim. I wasn't fully prepared, and so it was on Zoom. Thank God. And I started to talk, and I just like completely lost my words. Horrific failure, and I was mortified. And so the CEO interrupts me and he says, "Hold on, just take a breath and try it again." And so I pause a moment, collect my thoughts, try again, and then proceed to bomb horrifically once again, 2 times in a row. It was so bad, I'd like walk away from the computer and take a nap for a while. And so I kind of vowed at that moment, like I never wanted to feel that way again, because like actually at heart I am an introvert, and even worse, I get a little anxious like talking in front of people. And so I knew I had to do, I didn't want to feel that way again. And so it started with this process of like just making it about me and talking about my work to myself, even in private. And I recorded, I don't know, hundreds of looms that were never shared. But increasingly, I started to understand this connection about when I was creating the artifact, how it connected to the words I would use to describe it. And I started to get more confident about sharing that externally. And as soon as I started to share it, I kind of created this feedback loop, and I started to realize that the more I talked about it, the more I could create change that I was looking for. That early on in my career, things that I perceived as like, you can't change that. Nobody can change that. It's not possible. I started to realize that there's actually a connection between the artifact and the story and your ability to tell it that can create change. So the first thing I'll say is, people love to pass this image around of the double diamond like design thing. And it's like overly complex in all the wrong ways, overly simple in all the wrong ways. And it reminds me of like if you took a design consultant, they're like, here's our process. And they would write it out. That's how they would describe it. But if you actually worked on a product team, it's actually way more like this. It's a mess. It's generally true, I think, that you are kind of moving between these two phases of focusing on building the right thing and then build it right. But it's never so continuous. You just start on the left and go to the right. It's never that easy. You're always moving between them. And the result is it like kind of feels messy and it's hard at times. And that's okay. And I think that's the power of the story, is because everyone else is experiencing that as well. You're not alone and feeling, oh my God, it's a mess. Like, what are we doing? Why does it always feel this way? But when you can articulate a story that provides directionality through all that mess, it helps you process it, and you can share that processing with others, and they start to understand and they get on board as well. The other thing about this is, the teams that we work on are very siloed. Like everything about our organization is created for the convenience of the organization, like putting people into silos for the convenience of managing people, focus on very specific areas across the organization. And so as a designer, you're kind of, the default mode is like, let's look down and focus on this piece here. But that's actually not how customers experience the product. That is like, the silos are not real. It's just a figment of our organizational structure. And so often the best stories require you to sort of lift your head above these predefined buckets of where you're supposed to focus and raise your altitude. And the other cool thing about that is when you do so and act as a customer and pretend like, imagine yourself experiencing the story of the product, and you look down across all these silos, that you'll start to notice all the gaps that exist between them. Because again, it was created for the convenience of managing people, not for delivering the best product. So it's going to be full of gaps. And that is the exciting thing about being a designer, is when you can look down and see these opportunities that exist between all these silos that we've created. And that's not an exercise that you need to ask for permission for. There's no Figma owner's file in the design repo. Like, that's part of the job, is understanding that continuity between our areas and embracing it, and working with your partners across design to find that continuity and share the story. And as you work across these silos, you're going to talk to a lot of people, tons of people. And again, like, that's part of the job. You want to scale your impact, you got to talk to a lot of people. And that's also the value of this, like actively seeking your audience to understand their needs, and that you're not coming out of nowhere with this big vision of change, totally out of context, but instead you're coming from a position of understanding, and that your vision reflects that understanding, that you've done the due diligence to talk to people about what's important to you in this, and that they have a sense of ownership in the vision as well. And together you're kind of raising the tide for everyone. And now what this also says is you can't just like YOLO a loom out there. Like you can't just, the loom is not sufficient either. You actually have to build a lot of relationships along the way, like a lot of one-on-one conversations to do the research and develop sort of a sense of advocacy with your partners in leadership and revenue, product, engineering, design, all of them. And even especially in leadership, I think if you can find individuals in leadership that see some of their vision and your vision, that will increase their sense of ownership, and it'll sort of, the byproduct of that is it increases your sphere of influence, because now you have like senior leaders sharing your ideas, but they're their ideas as well. It's kind of all mixed together. And so the more people that can have ownership over the vision, the more likely it is to spread. And this is a process that really never stops, but it does become resonant with itself. The main way that I've found is that the more you start to think about and accepting the bigness of change and what is required to create that big change, the more you can just be more selective about meaningful work. You sort of get a sense of this is the thing that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Let's explore it more and let's talk to more people. And you can be selective about finding those things. And if you're working on something and you can't see it, you can't find the resonance, maybe it's not the right thing. And many of the best opportunities to find these connections are not, you're not going to be invited to them, basically. Like you could wait for design reviews or for your manager to sign you up for a town hall. You could wait for all those, but that's not enough. You need to be opportunistic and constantly seeking opportunities to learn more from your peers, share new ideas, and continue on this feedback loop. And that is a skill that it requires some consistency, like consistency in terms of like practicing yourself, but also just every day thinking about who I need to talk to learn more, and how can I incorporate their vision into this, and how could we work together to sort of expand the sphere of influence. This one I learned the hard way at my time at Facebook, and I think it's really important that you go really hard on problems, like almost with a sense of urgency, where you're like, oh God, so frustrating. Like, how dare we? Like, how can we do this to our customers? Like, find some bit of energy that you can really use to target a problem. But be really careful not to conflate people with problems and to assign responsibility of a problem to any group of people. And I learned this at Facebook, where I recorded a video and did some research about what seemed like a big problem. And I felt a little frustrated, like, I don't understand how it got this way. And I was saying some things, and the video got shared around, and I crossed the line in that video and implicated some people. And I didn't mean to, but I was, maybe my emotions got the best of me or something. But I'll never forget, at 7:30 in the morning Pacific time, a manager called me. He was very upset, even yelling at me. And as soon as he started talking, I had this moment of reflection. I was like, oh my God, I did do that. That was horrible. And I felt really bad. And so it's an easy mistake to make if you're not careful, but words matter. And it's important you don't, you attack problems with, some amount of ferociousness perhaps, but you are careful not to align people in problems. The other thing I learned is like, try to be authentic. Like authentic in the sense that you bring a humility, maybe a little vulnerability, and that you don't attempt to present as having all the answers. It's actually, I think the opposite is more engaging, coming with questions and humility, and asking, like, I need you all here to tell me how this is right or wrong. I actually don't have any answers. It's really the creation, this whole process is about getting people together to find the answers. It's not like, creating a loom and pontificating about all these things. I know it's about rallying around and getting feedback and making it better. The other thing I'll say is emotions are data. I've been frustrated before. I've been frustrated. Like some of the most engaging work I've done is like, I feel frustrated maybe about something that's happening. I don't like it. I want to change it. And I think maybe before sharing that emotion, it's really important to sort of look within and dig deep and sort of try to understand the data behind that emotion. And often you can find something that you can learn from and share from, and that could actually be the topic, the inspiration for the right change you need to create. I also recommend, if you haven't heard of this idea of the feedback formula, it's a way of expressing how you're, it's a way of sharing feedback in a way where you're kind of focused on your emotions and you stay on your side of the fence. You're not talking about other people and their intent. You're saying something like, I feel concerned when, it's some objective thing. And I recommend, Googling that if you haven't heard of that. The other thing I'll say is, if you're feeling something, if you're feeling negative or positive or excited, whatever it is, you shouldn't let those feelings just fester, but try to find a way to convert that or channel that energy into something that's productive, and try to, again, dig deep and understand what is driving this feeling and what can I do about it. You have agency as designers to investigate these things and try to change them. You don't have to accept feeling the way that you feel about something. So I think a lot of, if you're a designer and you're focused very much in your career about the creation of like artifacts right now, and then I come in and I'm saying, well, you need to do more. You need to be talking about it and sharing and like doing all this hustling. Like, it might actually feel like it's too much, and I think it kind of is. It's a lot. It is additional work, and this idea of moving between altitudes. Some days you're focused very much on the details of the design. Other days you feel like a salesman and you're talking to 1,000 people. It's really exhausting if you're not prepared. And so ease into it and manage your energy and take care of yourself. The other thing is, I think, learn to say no to things. Like, as you become more sensitive to the things that are resonant, look for opportunities to say no to things that maybe aren't so resonant with other people, and manage your time. And do all this in a way where you're not ignoring, still the day-to-day focus on artifacts. The artifacts have to exist. It is still a valid way to express our ideas and communicate our intent. That's it from me. I think I'm going to send it back to you now, Rachel. Thanks so much.